Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're diving into something that literally impacts every single one of us, every single day, yet somehow remains almost entirely hidden from view. There's this massive, unspoken gap between the polished science we all rely on and the incredibly demanding, obscured lives of the actual people creating it. We're going to explore that fascinating dynamic today, drawing from a really revealing new documentary that brings the hidden world of scientific research right out into the open.
Think about it for a second. You benefit from scientific discoveries all the time. From the complex medicines that keep us healthy to the advanced satellites up in space powering our GPS, the fruits of science are absolutely everywhere. But do you actually know what a scientist does all day? Honestly, for most of society, the day-to-day grind of being a researcher is a total mystery.
Part 1. The invisible work of science.
There's this massive disconnect, right? We easily consume these ubiquitous results, but we totally miss the invisible process it takes to get there. We're talking about years and years of training, constantly grappling with unknown answers, and just endless hours of lab work. It usually takes a massive global crisis, like the COVID-19 pandemic, for scientists to even get thrust into the public spotlight. And during that time, while they were working frantically behind the scenes, it became glaringly obvious that the public didn't really understand what the day-to-day work of these professionals actually looked like.
Well, that exact realization sparked something. Biophysicist Aaron Mertz and immunologist Shruti Naik decided they needed to pull back the curtain on this deeply opaque career path. So they teamed up and executive produced a brand new, feature-length documentary called The Endless Frontier. Their goal was super ambitious but straightforward. Just show audiences exactly what a laboratory is like, what the rigorous training process really entails, and who these people are that are working so hard on behalf of the public good.
Which brings us to Part 2, Inside the Endless Frontier. Now, the name of this doc is actually fascinating because it completely reframes our understanding of science. The endless frontier is a phrase coined way back in a landmark 1945 report to President Harry Truman by Vannevar Bush, who was the principal science advisor for the U.S. at the time. That specific report actually laid the groundwork for establishing the National Science Foundation. Aaron Mertz picked this title because he feels it perfectly nails the true, unending goals of the scientific endeavor. Science isn't a final destination, you know? It's an endless frontier.
And that idea totally flips how we perceive researchers. When we're kids, science is basically presented to us as a finished product, a closed textbook, or a homework assignment that has a literal answer key at the back. But the reality? Completely different. Science is a massive, endless work in progress. It's all about learning how to revise your thinking the second brand new data comes in. That shift from a finished product to an ongoing, messy frontier is the exact spirit the filmmakers want us to see.
Part 3. What makes a scientist?
To give us a real sense of the community, the documentary zeroes in on 3 American researchers at totally different stages of their careers, making sure to show real diversity in both what they study and where they are. We've got Andrea Graham, an ecologist and immunologist over at Princeton. We have Paul Barber, a marine scientist at UCLA. And just to prove that groundbreaking science isn't only happening on the coasts, they featured Jacob George, a neuroroboticist at the University of Utah. Together, they represent a great spectrum of what science looks like today.
Now, even though they study vastly different things, from coral reefs to neurorobotics, they are united by this universal narrative. Step 1, working in a lab. Step 2, and this is huge, not having any idea what the answer is going to be. Step 3, running rigorous experiments and crunching data to hunt for that answer. And finally, Step 4, revising their entire approach based on what they find. That loop of continuous iteration, that is the literal heartbeat of discovery, and it unites scientists across every single discipline.
But there's another major factor that unites them all, and it's the incredibly demanding training process. Mertz shared this super relatable story, saying, "Even my own family didn't fully understand why I was in school until I was 30. I love that quote. It perfectly highlights just how confusing this whole pipeline is to anyone on the outside. These researchers are mentoring the next generation through a grueling decade-plus educational marathon, and most of society is completely oblivious to it.
Let's move to Part 4, the battle for funding.
Here is the really stressful part of the job. Every researcher in this documentary shares the exact same heavy burden, the constant, looming struggle of securing federal grants. They have to fight tooth and nail for funding just to hire new team members or simply keep their research portfolios alive. The doc captures a particularly tense moment by following these scientists as they navigate recent, severe upheavals in federal support, especially the major changes that hit in early 2025. Those upheavals put immense pressure on these professionals, making an already daunting challenge even harder.
And we have to understand this funding instability isn't just a bureaucratic headache. It has devastating real-world consequences. When funding dries up or gets shaky, labs face the very real possibility of having to shut down vital research. Even worse, they might have to terminate a bunch of their training positions. That literally cuts off the lifeblood of future scientific discovery, because you're getting rid of the exact people who are learning how to do the work.
Which leads us to part 5, the future of discovery.
Looking ahead, Mertz brings up this really fascinating duality. On one hand, he's got this short-term optimism. Politics go in waves, right? Elections happen every 2 to 4 years, so he's hopeful that national support for science will naturally rebound in the medium term. But juxtaposed against that is a deep, long-term pessimism. He is profoundly worried about the lasting implications of these recent funding uncertainties. His fear is that stalled or canceled grants have permanently damaged the career pipeline, basically deterring a whole rising generation from ever entering the field to begin with.
And that brings us to the starkest warning in this entire explainer: one generation. Mertz warns that even just a few short years of stalled grants for trainees means that brilliant people are simply going to look elsewhere for their careers. If the prospects are bad, they won't do it. And if they abandon the field, he estimates it could take up to a full generation to fix that talent gap and undo the damage done to our scientific capabilities.
At the end of the day, we have to remember the humanity at the core of all this. Like Mertz points out in the documentary, science is not done by robots, yet. It's done by passionate, curious human beings who desperately want to make a difference in our world. They are the ones driving our healthcare, our tech, and our innovation forward. But for us to stay at that cutting edge, those humans need sustained, reliable investment.
So it leaves us with this massive, vital question. If the reality of being a scientist means an intensely long training period, a hidden daily grind, and a completely stressful battle just to keep your lab funded, will the next generation still choose to explore the endless frontier? It's a really fragile ecosystem, and the future of our biggest discoveries depends entirely on whether we choose to support the humans doing the work. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you walk away seeing the real faces behind the science we rely on every single day.